Imagine a woman in the late 17th and early 18th centuries wielding administrative power typically reserved for men, orchestrating political shifts within royal chambers and amassing such wealth that by her death in 1744, she was England's richest woman. This was Sarah Churchill, the Duchess of Marlborough. From modest means and little formal schooling, she used intelligence, marriage and ambition to climb the social ladder, become a pivotal figure in English history. Contemporaries describe Sarah as everything a noblewoman was usually discouraged from being: assertive, clever, beautiful, articulate, healthy and hot-tempered. She was a force of nature, a flame that scorched rather than warmed everything that came near her. She successfully navigated the volatile politics of the Glorious Revolution alongside her husband John, whom she married secretly around 1678 after initially rejecting his proposal. Their partnership was exceptional, intertwining personal devotion with political manoeuvring, with Sarah constantly utilising her position to secure the best opportunities for John. Her legacy speaks for itself. Her dynasty survived centuries later, most notably through her descendant, the famed 20th century Prime Minister and statesman Winston Churchill. Sarah did not simply support powerful men, she was the independent architect who designed and secured the family's power and prosperity, defying the expected roles for women of her rank. To understand the full extent of Sarah's influence, we must turn to her most crucial relationship. Sarah's rise relied on one friendship with Princess Anne. As a maid of honour, Sarah met Anne, who was younger, shy and often overlooked, but Anne adored Sarah's confidence and decisiveness. Their bond became both intimate and political. To drop court formalities, they used pseudonyms. Anne was Mrs. Morley and Sarah the candid Mrs. Freeman. Anne pleaded, "Let me beg you not to call me Your Highness at every word, but be free with me, as friends ought to be." The political stage was set during the Glorious Revolution, where the Churchills transferred their loyalty to William of Orange, securing their allegiance to the Protestant cause. When Anne finally succeeded to the throne in 1702, the rewards for Sarah's decades of devotion were immense. John Churchill was created the Duke of Marlborough and awarded significant military salaries. Sarah was simultaneously elevated, received the highest court appointments available to a woman, mistress of the robes and, most crucially, keeper of the privy purse. The real twist was how personal intimacy became national command. As keeper of the privy purse, Sarah had direct access to the Queen and control over finances. This enabled her to manage the Queen's private funds and influence political patronage. Sarah quickly exploited this leverage. A Whig supporter, she pushed the Queen, who leaned Tory, to give more power to Whigs and back the War of the Spanish Succession. The Duke's victories abroad depended on Sarah's intimate political control and loyalty. The stakes were higher than mere gossip. Sarah's influence was literally running the British Empire. However, her growing ambition and controlling personality strained the Queen. Sarah's conviction that she and the Queen were true equals, as implied by the nickname Mrs. Freeman, would lead to a catastrophic political overstep, one that ended with her publicly humiliating the monarch and discovering that even the strongest bonds of friendship cannot withstand a direct challenge to the crown. The historical portrayal of Sarah as merely a demanding wife or a meddlesome friend overlooks her most profound contribution, her administrative and financial genius. Sarah Churchill was by all accounts one of the pre-eminent financiers of her era. Her work as Keeper of the Privy Purse revolutionised the royal household's financial accountability. Sarah prided herself on being a meticulous bookkeeper. She insisted that the Crown's private spending be recorded with unprecedented accuracy, requiring Queen Anne to personally sign off on all expenditures. This level of administrative scrutiny was almost unheard of in the 18th century, providing a clear accounting of the court's multi-million-pound operations. The recently rediscovered account book she meticulously kept revealed the scope of her control. She supervised huge sums, including a payment of nearly £7,000 for a Thanksgiving anthem funded for Secret Service, and an astonishing amount spent on the Queen's supply of tea and chocolate. By controlling these expenditures, Sarah effectively served as Anne's business manager and gatekeeper, shaping access and influence at the highest level. His success in administering the Queen's finances laid the independent foundation for a later career. The evidence now suggests that Sarah should be established as the co-founder and prime financier of the Marlborough fortune, successfully creating and administering immense wealth, independent of her husband's military career. Sarah, deeply political, used her access to pursue her agenda. Anne, a natural Tory, faced intense pressure from Sarah, a staunch Whig, who pushed for parliamentary power and continuation of the war. Sarah's lobbying led Anne to allow moderate government led by John Churchill and Sidney Godolphin. This secured the Whig agenda, the war's continuation, and John's command. While the Duke fought abroad, Sarah kept him updated of court affairs and relayed his advice to the Queen. The ultimate reward for the Duke's monumental military achievements, particularly the victory at Blenheim in 1704, was the gift of land and a large sum of money from Queen Anne to construct Blenheim Palace. Sarah turned her practical genius to overseeing Blenheim Palace's construction while her husband was away. She managed every detail herself, asserting her role as a demanding client. She notoriously disliked the grand design chosen for the palace, which she found too ornate and costly. Consequently, she became embroiled in years of acrimonious battles with the architect Sir John Vanbrugh and engaged in lawsuits over payments to workers. Despite its monumental significance, the construction of Blenheim became an enormous financial and political burden, consuming the Churchills' attention for the rest of their lives, straining their relationship with the Crown. Sarah's downfall was catalysed by her own arrogance and the Queen's weariness. Anne, described as shy and reserved, grew increasingly alienated by Sarah's controlling personality and her relentless political aggressive lobbying on behalf of the Whigs. Anne found comfort in Sarah's cousin, Abigail Masham, who was discreet, compliant and well connected to the Tories through her cousin Robert Harley. Sarah discovered a personal and political betrayal when Anne secretly attended Abigail's wedding in 1707, gave her a dowry from the Privy Purse, which, of course, Sarah managed. This signalled that Anne operated independently of Mrs. Freeman. By mid-1707, Abigail had replaced Sarah as Anne's favourite and conduit for Tory influence. The decline in their relationship culminated in several dramatic and public clashes. Sarah, utterly convinced of her indispensable status and operating under the delusion that she was truly the Queen's equal, pushed the boundaries of deference beyond recovery. Frustrated by Anne's political resistance and her growing favour for Abigail, Sarah publicly erupted. In one notorious politically charged argument, often related to her relentless Whig lobbying, Sarah committed the ultimate act. She told the Queen to be quiet, or in the vernacular of the day, to shut up in front of others. This insult directed at the monarch was unforgivable. Historians know that regardless of one's stature, you don't tell the monarch to shut her trap. Anne, finally asserting her royal authority, withdrew entirely. She refused to see Sarah, only instructing her to submit her complaints in writing. In 1711, the separation became official. Sarah was summarily stripped of her offices, ordered to immediately return the golden key that symbolised her role as keeper of the privy purse. John Churchill was subsequently dismissed from his military command, and Anne ordered construction on Blenheim Palace to halt. Sarah did not depart quietly. In a desperate attempt to salvage her position, she threatened the Queen with blackmail, offering to publish the decades of intimate letters they had exchanged. But Anne remained resolute, forcing Sarah's banishment. The true shift in Sarah's life and legacy came later. Following the Queen's death in 1714 and her beloved husband's death in 1722, Sarah focused entirely on wealth management. She proved herself to be an extraordinary and successful widow, administering the massive family fortune through astute investments and estate management. She had achieved financial independence, successfully securing her dynasty, not through the court's fleeting favour, but through her own financial genius. Her final, most enduring act of vengeance and power was the publication of her memoir, an account of the conduct of the Dowager Duchess of Marlborough in 1742. Written specifically to defend her conduct and attack her rivals, this fiercely partisan account depicted Queen Anne as a weak, easily manipulated and disloyal monarch who lacked the political sophistication Sarah believed she possessed. This was an almost unheard of act of public warfare by an elite woman against the memory of a sovereign. Sarah's memoir successfully biased the historical record, ensuring that her negative portrayal of Queen Anne dominated historical narratives for centuries. By controlling the narrative, Sarah Churchill ultimately outlived and overshadowed the crown she served. Sarah Churchill, Duchess of Marlborough, died at the age of 84 in 1744 and was buried at Blenheim Palace, a monument to the political and financial achievements of her dynasty. Her biography is a profound study of power achieved outside traditional male structures. Sarah used the intimate and overlooked space of female friendship and domestic administration, mistress of the robes and keeper of the privy purse, to become the single most influential political player in early 18th century England. Her legacy is one of defying independence, and the crown eventually rejected her. She did not fade away. Instead, she leveraged her formidable financial acumen to become the wealthiest woman of her time, and used her intelligence and vengeful pen to reshape the historical perception of the monarch who had dismissed her. Sarah Churchill proved that for women of ambition, real power lay not in a title, but in the capacity to manage money and control the story.